Rain hammered Obsidian Bay hard enough to make the neon signs bleed. Mia Bennett had just stepped beneath the narrow awning of her apartment building when gunfire shattered the night. She froze with a carton of pepper noodles in one hand and her translation tablet tucked beneath her arm. Across the flooded street, black vehicles screamed through the intersection. Muzzle flashes burst from lowered windows. Tires cut through standing water, throwing silver sheets across the pavement. A man emerged from the darkness. He was enormous. 6 feet 4 inches of muscle and menace, staggered beneath the neon glow, dressed in what had probably been an immaculate black suit before rain and blood ruined it. His broad shoulders strained against the tailored fabric. Wet, dark hair clung to a face so brutally handsome that it looked designed by a casting director with unrealistic expectations. He took 2 steps toward Mia. Then he collapsed at her feet. Her takeout hit the pavement. The noodles survived 3 days in her refrigerator, 40 minutes in a delivery vehicle, and 1 elevator malfunction, only to die beneath the polished shoe of a bleeding stranger. Mia stared down at the red sauce, mixing with rainwater. Oh, come on. The man lifted his head. His eyes burned gold. Not reflected gold. Not contact lens gold. Actual, unnatural, predatory gold. Behind him, armed men poured from the black vehicles. Some wore tailored coats. Others carried weapons large enough to invalidate several municipal safety codes. They fired toward the intersection as shadowy figures advanced through the rain. The wounded stranger seized Mia's wrist. His grip was iron. Move. His voice was low, rough, and commanding. It carried the kind of authority normally reserved for kings, executioners, and directors who had gone 12 hours over schedule. Mia looked at her crushed dinner. You owe me 28 credits. Another burst of gunfire tore sparks from the brick wall beside her head. The man yanked her forward. A bulletproof luxury SUV swerved onto the sidewalk. One of its rear doors flew open. Mia barely had time to inhale before the stranger lifted her bodily and threw her inside. He climbed in after her. The door slammed. The vehicle accelerated so violently that Mia landed across the rear seat. Her skirt riding halfway up her thighs and her tablet digging into her ribs. The enormous man braced one hand against the ceiling, while blood streamed from a wound below his shoulder. Outside, his men returned fire through narrow openings in the armored windows. "Drive!" he ordered. The driver did not ask where. The SUV launched into traffic, cutting through the neon storm, while bullets struck the reinforced body with dulled metallic thuds. Mia pushed herself upright and smoothed her rain-soaked hair away from her face. She had spent the last 9 hours translating an episode in which a bankrupt heiress discovered that her surgeon fiancé was secretly the twin brother of the man who had donated his heart to her former husband. This was still not the strangest thing that had happened to her all day. She looked at the bleeding stranger. He looked back. Up close, he was even more intimidating. 30, perhaps. American. Pale skin, hard cheekbones, a square jaw dusted with dark stubble. His shirt was open at the collar, revealing a powerful neck and the upper edge of a chest built like a fortified wall. His presence filled the vehicle. It was not merely physical. Something invisible rolled from him in waves, thick with danger, dominance, and barely restrained violence. Mia's instincts told her to lower her eyes, bare her throat, and remain very still. Her professional instincts told her that the lighting was excellent. The gold in his eyes faded into a cold gray. "You saw nothing," he said. Mia glanced at the bullet embedded in the armored window. "I saw several things. You will forget them. That depends. Are you planning to hit me over the head and trigger a selective amnesia arc?" His expression did not change. The driver's eyes flicked toward the rearview mirror. A second man sat in the front passenger seat, holding a compact rifle. He slowly turned around. Mia pointed at the bleeding stranger's shoulder. "You should apply pressure," he continued, staring at her. Rain raced across the dark windows. Sirens echoed somewhere behind them, growing faint as the SUV entered the private tunnels beneath the central district. The stranger removed his suit jacket. The movement revealed more blood, more muscle, and a gun secured beneath his arm. He pressed the expensive fabric against the wound as if it were a disposable napkin. "Name," he said. "Mia Bennett." "Occupation." freelance subtitle translator. His gaze hardened. For whom? Studios. Mostly serialized dramas. What organization do you serve? Whichever one pays before the deadline. He studied her face as though searching for hidden allegiance. Mia allowed him to look. She knew what he saw. Sharp features, wide blue eyes, pale skin, flushed from cold rain. Full lips that had gotten her into trouble whenever people mistook expressiveness for flirtation. A slender figure that appeared delicate until she started negotiating invoices. His attention lingered 1 second too long. Then the SUV turned sharply. Mia caught the edge of the seat. The stranger did not move at all. "My name is Darius Vale," he said. The armed man in front stiffened slightly, as if even hearing the name required respect. Mia waited. Darius appeared dissatisfied by her response. "Should that mean something to me?" she asked. The silence inside the vehicle became profound. The passenger stared at her with the horrified fascination of a man watching someone insult an active volcano. Darius leaned closer. His shoulders blocked the dim ceiling lights. His scent reached her through the blood and rain, dark cedar, cold stone, and something wild enough to make the fine hairs on her arms rise. "I rule every pack in Obsidian Bay." Mia considered this. "Business packs? Wolf packs?" "Oh." His eyes flashed gold again. Mia nodded slowly. "So we're doing supernatural crime drama." The passenger made a choking sound. Darius's voice dropped lower. "You are either remarkably calm or catastrophically foolish. Those are not mutually exclusive." The SUV entered an underground garage. Steel barriers rose behind them. Security teams surrounded the vehicle before it stopped. Darius did not open the door. Instead, he looked toward the front passenger. "Cashin." "Yes, Alpha. Report." The eastern route was compromised. 3 vehicles attacked. 6 assassins confirmed dead. 2 escaped. The weapons carried nightclaw markings. Darius's jaw tightened. Cassian continued. "The council gathering begins in 48 hours. If the elders believe tonight's attack weakened you, they will move against the throne." Mia raised one finger. "Question." Neither man acknowledged her. Is Nightclaw a rival family, a rebel faction, or the name of an aggressive fragrance? Cassian looked ready to eject himself from the moving vehicle, even though it was no longer moving. Darius watched her, with the expression of a predator encountering an animal too bizarre to eat. "The Nightclaw faction rejects my authority," he said. "Rebellious pack elders. Got it. They probably wear matching rings and meet in a room with unnecessarily long curtains." Cassian whispered, "Alpha, may I remove her?" Darius did not look away from Mia. No. That single word changed the air. Cassian faced forward again. Darius released the blood-soaked jacket from his shoulder. The bleeding had slowed, but the wound was still ugly. Mia noticed the skin around it already beginning to close. Definitely supernatural crime drama. Darius leaned back. "The elders intend to challenge my right to rule. Under the oldest laws, an unmated alpha may be declared unstable during a succession dispute." Mia's eyebrows rose. "Convenient. I require a mate before the council convenes." "Then you should probably call someone." "I have." She glanced around the vehicle. "No, you abducted someone. The distinction matters in court. For the next 3 months, you will pose as my fiancée." Darius delivered the sentence without hesitation. No softening. No uncertainty. He spoke as though announcing a military order that had already been obeyed. "You will live in my residence, attend public functions, convince the elders that our bond is genuine. In return, you will be protected." Mia stared at him. He waited. The rain drummed against the roof. Cassian kept his head perfectly still, but his attention had clearly shifted toward the rear seat. Darius's expression remained cold. Mia could almost see the scene as he imagined it. The helpless civilian would tremble. She would plead for her freedom. Perhaps tears would gather in her beautiful eyes. He would remain unmoved, establishing the power imbalance before the end of the episode. Mia pulled out her phone. Darius narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing?" "Taking notes." "You misunderstand your position." No. I understand it perfectly. You are a wounded alpha king facing a political challenge. You need a temporary fiancé. You have selected a financially unstable but visually suitable civilian because the plot budget does not allow time for proper matchmaking. I selected you because you witnessed classified activity. That is worse. Mia opened a new document. First, your dialogue needs work. Darius went completely still. Cassian turned his face toward the window, but his shoulders tightened. Mia tapped the screen. You said for the next 3 months you will pose as my fiancé. Functional, but predictable. There is no emotional hook, no personal threat, no seductive ambiguity. You sound like a villain from episode 4 who gets replaced after poor audience testing. Darius's gray eyes became glacial. I have killed men for less. Better. Still generic. A muscle moved in his jaw. Mia typed. You need something sharper. Perhaps, by sunrise, Obsidian Bay will believe you belong to me. Then you pause. Look at me like that. Very good. Then add, and anyone who questions it will not live long enough to regret the mistake. Cassian slowly looked back at her. Mia pointed toward Darius. See? He has the face for it. The original line wastes the cheekbones. Darius seemed to have lost the ability to speak. For one glorious moment, the most terrifying man in Obsidian Bay sat in absolute silence while blood soaked his shirt and a kidnapped translator criticized his performance. Mia continued. Now, compensation. His voice returned. You are not negotiating. I am absolutely negotiating. This is a fake engagement with organized crime, political conspiracy, live ammunition, and probable hostile in-laws. Standard translation rates do not apply. You have no leverage. I have trope awareness. That is not leverage. You say that now. Wait until someone switches my medication, hires a former lover to humiliate me at a banquet, or claims I insulted an ancestral portrait. Darius glanced at Cassian gave the smallest possible shake of his head, confirming that he did not understand her either. Mia began counting on her fingers. Base fee. Housing allowance, although apparently I am being imprisoned in your residence, so we can waive that. Wardrobe budget. Public appearance rate. Overtime after midnight. Separate compensation for gunfire, poisoning attempts, vehicle explosions, staged scandals, and forced proximity. Darius's stare sharpened. Forced proximity. 1 bed. There are hundreds of rooms in my residence. Not once the snowstorm begins. It does not snow in Obsidian Bay. Then a security lockdown, flood, power failure, structural damage. Writers always find a way. No writers control my life. Mia looked at his gunshot wound. Evidence suggests otherwise. Cassian coughed into his fist. Darius's gaze snapped toward him. Cassian became fascinated by the dashboard. Mia kept typing. I also require emotional damage compensation. For what damage? Anticipated damage. Your personality indicates significant exposure risk. My personality. Cold, controlling, repressed. Probably haunted by a tragic childhood you refused to discuss until episode 21. Darius's eyes narrowed to silver slits. You know nothing about my childhood. Dead parents? Silence. Mia nodded. Episode 21. The rear door opened from outside. A medical team waited beside a private elevator, but nobody entered. Darius's aura had become so heavy that even trained personnel remained several steps away. Mia lifted another finger. Most important, there must be a strict fee schedule for reproductive plotlines. Darius looked at her as if she had changed languages. Explain. Fake pregnancy rumor, 50,000 credits. Forged medical report, 75,000. Public confrontation involving someone throwing water or wine at me, additional 10,000. Actual pregnancy misunderstanding, 100,000. There will be no pregnancy. That is what everyone says in the first episode. There will be no sexual contact. Mia paused. Cassian stopped breathing. Darius's gaze remained steady, but a faint pulse appeared beside his throat. Mia slowly entered a note. Male lead initiates unnecessary denial before topic is raised. I am establishing boundaries. Of course. Your tone suggests disbelief. My tone is billable. Darius leaned toward her again. His face came close enough for Mia to see the rain caught in his lashes. Power radiated from him, ancient and brutal. The wolf beneath his skin pressed against the fragile human shape containing it. Most people would have looked away. Mia tilted her phone toward him. Approve the rates. His gaze dropped to the screen. The list was extensive. Hazard pay, kidnapping surcharge, false identity administration fee, formal event attendance, public kissing, private rehearsal for public kissing, food poisoning recovery leave, memory loss contingency, evil relative intervention, unexpected ex-fiancé appearance. Darius read the final line twice. Secret twin compensation. You can never be too careful. I do not have a twin. Have you checked recently? His nostrils flared. Then, to Mia's astonishment, the corner of his mouth moved. It was not a smile. Darius Vale probably considered smiles an unacceptable breach of security, but something had cracked through his lethal composure. Interest. He looked at her as though she were no longer an inconvenience. She had become a puzzle. You truly are not afraid of me, he said. Mia lowered her phone. I am terrified. The admission erased the faint amusement from his face. Her pulse had been racing since the first gunshot. Her hands were cold. Every primitive instinct in her body recognized the creature sitting across from her as the most dangerous thing she had ever encountered. But fear did not pay invoices. Fear did not stop bullets. And fear certainly did not improve bad dialogue. Mia held his gaze. I simply refuse to be terrified for free. Cassian closed his eyes. Darius stared at her for several long seconds. Then he extended one blood-stained hand. 3 months. You obey security instructions without argument. You do not leave my residence unguarded. You reveal nothing about the packs. In exchange, I accept your fee schedule. All of it? No secret twin compensation. Non-negotiable. His fingers flexed. Mia waited. Fine, he said. And my noodles. I will buy you new noodles. The original order included dumplings. You will have dumplings. Daily? Darius's expression suggested that overthrowing the rebellious elders might be easier than surviving this conversation. Daily. Mia placed her hand in his. His palm was hot and rough. The instant their skin touched, a strange current raced up her arm. Darius's pupils widened. Gold flared in his eyes, brighter than before. For a fraction of a second, the vehicle filled with the scent of cedar and winter lightning. Then he closed his fingers around hers. Agreed, he said. Mia shook his hand once. Excellent. Your audition starts tomorrow. Darius did not release her. My audition. You need to convincingly portray a devoted fiancé. Based on tonight's performance, you require intensive coaching. I am the Alpha King, and currently your romantic range consists of issuing commands and bleeding on civilians. Outside the open door, the medical team stared at them. Cassian looked toward the ceiling as though asking an indifferent universe for strength. Darius finally released Mia's hand. He stepped out of the SUV, towering over everyone in the underground garage. Blood covered his shirt. Armed wolves lowered their heads as he passed. Doctors rushed forward. Security teams awaited his orders. He had survived an assassination attempt. He faced a rebellion. His throne depended on deceiving the oldest and most suspicious predators in Obsidian Bay. Yet when he looked back at the beautiful translator sitting inside his armored vehicle, there was something dangerously close to uncertainty in his eyes. Mia retrieved her tablet and climbed out after him. Tomorrow morning, she called. We begin with longing stares. Darius stopped. Every wolf in the garage froze. Mia smiled sweetly. Try not to threaten anyone until breakfast. It destroys the romantic pacing. For the second time that night, the Alpha King of Obsidian Bay had no response. Darius did threaten someone before breakfast. Mia considered this a failure of discipline. The victim was a security officer who had allowed a florist to enter the Eastern Corridor without a full background investigation. The florist was 70 years old, carried 6 white roses, and had apparently served the Vale household for 3 decades. Darius still made the officer explain the breach while standing at rigid attention in the marble breakfast room. Mia sat at the far end of the table, eating dumplings from a silver serving dish and taking notes. "Your posture is excellent," she said when the officer had been dismissed. The pacing was strong. The lowered voice worked. But you leaned too heavily on implied execution. Darius turned toward her. Morning light poured through the towering windows behind him, tracing the hard outline of his shoulders. A fresh black suit replaced the one ruined by blood and rain. The gunshot wound beneath his shirt had closed to a dark red mark overnight, which was unfair on several biological levels. "I was not performing. That is the problem. You are naturally intimidating, but romance requires range. I do not require range. You require an entire emotional education." He walked toward the table. The household staff immediately lowered their eyes. Even the silver-haired steward standing by the wall went still as Darius approached Mia. Mia calmly dipped another dumpling into sauce. Darius stopped beside her chair. "Tonight, you will attend the elder banquet as my fiancée." "Good. Public event rates apply." "It is not a performance. Everything is a performance when elderly aristocrats are judging your relationship." His jaw tightened. "The syndicate elders are not harmless aristocrats. Every person at that table has ordered deaths. Several have challenged me in combat. They will test you because they believe a human is too weak to stand beside an alpha." Mia chewed thoughtfully. "What kind of test?" "Intimidation, insults, threats. So dinner with relatives. They may attempt to provoke fear. They will succeed. You cannot show it. I charge extra for emotional suppression." Darius placed both hands on the table and leaned down. His face came close to hers. His gray eyes were calm, but the force beneath that calm pressed against the room like deep water against glass. "This is not one of your dramas, Mia," she swallowed. The air around him grew heavier. For the first time that morning, her humor slipped. She saw the truth behind his warning. This was not a ballroom filled with eccentric wealthy families and conveniently evil mothers-in-law. These were predators who had survived through violence, bloodline politics, and obedience to laws older than the city above them. They would not merely dislike her. They would smell that she was human. They would know she was afraid. Darius watched the realization cross her face. His expression hardened, but something protective moved beneath it. "Stay close to me," he said. "Do not accept food or drink from anyone except Cassian. Do not enter a room alone. If I tell you to leave, you leave immediately." Mia looked up at him. "Are you worried about me?" "No. You are hovering. I am issuing instructions. Your hand is 6 inches from my shoulder." He straightened at once. Mia smiled. "Progress. Defensive denial is a classic sign of emotional attachment." Darius walked away without replying. By evening, the Vale residence had been transformed into a military costume department. 3 stylists, 2 jewelers, and 1 visibly terrified dressmaker surrounded Mia in a private suite. They spoke in whispers, handling every garment as though failure might result in exile. Mia stood before a mirror while a dark crimson gown was fastened around her body. The fabric hugged her waist, traced the curve of her hips, and fell in a smooth line to the floor. The neckline was elegant but daring, exposing her shoulders and the pale line of her throat. Her golden brown hair was pinned loosely behind her head, leaving soft strands around her face. She looked expensive. More importantly, she looked like the heroine immediately before a public humiliation scene. The door opened. Darius entered. Every stylist bowed and fled with such speed that Mia suspected they had practiced. Darius stopped 3 steps inside the room. His eyes moved over her. Slowly, the silence lengthened. Mia watched his face in the mirror. His features remained controlled, but his pupils widened. A faint gold flicker passed through his irises. His broad chest expanded once beneath his tuxedo jacket. "Well?" she asked. "You will wear the silver necklace." Mia looked at the jewelry arranged on the table. That was not the question. "It is the answer." You stared for 8 seconds. I was assessing the dress. Did it pass inspection? Darius picked up a necklace set with a single dark gemstone. Turn around! She did. He stepped behind her. His fingers brushed the back of her neck as he fastened the chain. The contact sent a strange warmth down her spine. Mia kept her expression calm, but her breathing changed. Darius noticed. His hands paused. For one suspended moment, neither of them spoke. His reflection stood behind hers, dark and powerful, his body close enough to surround her without touching. The gemstone settled against her skin. It carries my scent, he said. Mia looked at him through the mirror. Jewelry can do that? The stone was kept in my private chamber. It will mark you as protected. That sounds more intimate than you intended. His gaze met hers. Everything about tonight is intentional. The reply was better than anything she had coached him to say. Mia turned slowly. You have been practicing. Darius opened the door. The banquet took place beneath the city. The elevator descended far below the polished towers of Obsidian Bay, passing security levels inaccessible to ordinary citizens. When the doors finally opened, Mia stepped into a world that had nothing to do with the modern metropolis above. A vast stone hall stretched before them. Black pillars rose toward a vaulted ceiling carved with wolves, battles, and crowned figures. Fire burned in iron braziers. Long banners marked the ancient pacts, each symbol embroidered in silver thread. More than 100 guests filled the chamber. Every conversation stopped. Mia felt their attention strike her like a physical blow. The men were massive. Some were nearly as tall as Darius, with heavy shoulders and scarred faces. The women wore dark formal gowns and expressions colder than winter. Gold, amber, and silver eyes watched the human woman entering on the Alpha King's arm. Then the pressure began. It rolled through the hall in waves. Predatory aura. Mia had felt Darius use his power in the SUV, but this was different. The gathered wolves projected their dominance together, filling the chamber with invisible weight. Her lungs tightened, her skin went cold. Every survival instinct screamed at her to lower her head. Darius's arm moved around her waist. His hand rested against her hip. The contact steadied her. Breathe, he murmured. I am breathing. Too quickly. This room has the emotional atmosphere of a murder trial. His thumb pressed once against her side. The gesture might have been reassurance, or a warning to remain quiet. Possibly both. An elder with white hair approached. A long scar crossed his left eye. Alpha. Elder Garrick. The man looked at Mia. His stare was direct, openly hostile. This is the human? Mia extended her hand. This is Mia. Garrick ignored it. Darius's aura changed. The braziers flickered. Several nearby wolves stepped back. Garrick's face tightened, but before the confrontation could become fatal, Mia lowered her hand and smiled. No handshake. Very traditional. Strong opening. You have established opposition without unnecessary exposition. Garrick frowned. What? She translates television, Darius said flatly. The elder looked at him as though this explanation created more questions than it answered. Darius guided Mia forward. The room parted for him. Yet every pair of eyes followed her. Whispers spread behind jeweled hands and crystal glasses. Human, temporary, weak, unsuitable. Darius heard them. Mia knew he heard them because each word made the muscles in his shoulders tighten. At the central table, she was seated beside him. Cassian personally poured her water from a sealed bottle. Mia inspected it. Cassian raised one eyebrow. Alpha's orders. Did you taste it first? Yes. Excellent. Loyal second in command. Possible future betrayal in Season 2. I do not know what that means. Keep it that way. The banquet began. No one relaxed. Questions came disguised as conversation. How had Mia met Darius? What family did she come from? What did she understand about pack duty? Could a human produce a suitable heir? Mia answered carefully. She told them that she and Darius had met during a violent rainstorm, which was technically true. She described her family as ordinary, which disappointed those hoping to uncover scandal. She claimed her relationship with Darius had developed quickly because emotional pacing was essential when one had limited episodes. Nobody understood the last part. Darius did. He looked down at his plate to conceal the smallest movement of his mouth. Mia noticed. By the third course, she was certain the Alpha King was enjoying himself. He did not smile. That would have alarmed the elders more than open violence. But something in him had loosened. Each time Mia redirected an insult, his eyes warmed with dark amusement. Then a woman entered the conversation. Elder Seraphine Morcant sat across from them in a gown the color of dried blood. She was beautiful in a severe, ageless way. Silver streaked her black hair. Her cheekbones were sharp enough to cut glass. The room seemed to avoid her. Even Garrick lowered his voice when she looked toward him. Seraphine studied Mia over the rim of her glass. "A human bride," she said. "How innovative." Mia smiled. "Thank you. It was not praise. Then your delivery was too subtle." Darius's hand tightened around his fork. Seraphine's eyes flashed amber. "You have courage. I have deadlines. They create a similar effect." The elder leaned back. "Do you know how many women have desired the position beside our alpha?" "No. Is there a mailing list?" "You mock traditions you do not understand. I mock most things I do not understand. It prevents them from becoming intimidating." Seraphine's lips thinned. Darius turned his head slightly toward Mia. "Enough." His tone was quiet. Mia heard the warning beneath it. She nodded and returned to her meal. Seraphine said nothing more, but her gaze remained fixed on Mia until the musicians began playing. Several elders rose and moved toward the adjoining gallery. Darius was pulled into a discussion about territorial revenue with Garrick and 2 other council members. Mia stayed near Cassian for 11 minutes. Then a servant approached and whispered that Darius wished to see her in the west parlor. Cassian's hand closed around the servant's arm before Mia could respond. "Who gave that instruction?" The servant went pale. "Elder Morcant." Cassian released him. "No." Mia looked toward the far side of the hall. Seraphine stood near a narrow doorway, waiting. Classic isolation maneuver. Mia's pulse quickened. Her judgment advised refusal. Her professional curiosity overruled it. "I'll go." Cassian stared at her. "The Alpha specifically ordered you not to enter a room alone." "She is an elderly woman. She tore out a councilman's throat during a tax dispute." Mia considered this. "Then, I'll be brief." Cassian stepped in front of her. Before he could stop her, Darius called his name from across the room. Garrick was speaking urgently, and 2 security officers had approached with a report. Cassian looked between Mia and his alpha. It was exactly the kind of timing Mia had expected. She patted his arm. "Do not worry. This scene has rules. Real life does not have scene rules. That attitude is why people get surprised." She crossed the hall before he could catch her. The west parlor was small, private, and deliberately oppressive. Dark wood covered the walls. A fire burned low in the grate. Heavy curtains blocked the windows. Seraphine entered after Mia and closed the door. Mia remained standing. Seraphine walked to a polished table. "You have caused considerable disruption. I have been here less than 2 hours. That is what concerns me." The elder removed a slim leather checkbook from her purse and threw it onto the table. It landed with a sharp slap. Mia stared at it. Her heartbeat changed. Seraphine mistook the reaction for fear. She smiled. It was a cruel, satisfied smile, the expression of a woman who had destroyed softer people for decades and expected one more to collapse in front of her. "Name your price," she said. "Leave Obsidian Bay tonight. Never contact Darius again." Outside the parlor, footsteps approached. Darius had sensed Mia's absence almost immediately. He dismissed Garrick in the middle of a sentence, crossed the banquet hall, and followed the trace of his own scent from the stone necklace around Mia's throat. Cassian met him near the corridor. "Elder Morcant took her into the west parlor." Darius's eyes turned gold. The air cracked with alpha power. Guests moved away from the corridor. Darius reached the door and heard Seraphine's voice through the wood. "Name your price." His hand closed around the handle. He imagined Mia pale and cornered. He imagined tears in her blue eyes, He imagined Seraphine threatening her with the full cruelty of the old council. The wolf inside him surged. He was one breath away from tearing the door off its hinges. Then Mia spoke. 1 million. Darius went still. Inside the parlor, Seraphine's smile deepened. 1 million credits? Mia snatched the checkbook from the table. Her eyes lit with professional enthusiasm. For 1 month. Seraphine blinked. Mia opened the checkbook and inspected the first page. Actually, considering inflation, 1 million only covers 30 days of total absence. During that period, I will avoid all public events, ignore direct communication, and appear emotionally devastated in one approved photograph. The elder's mouth opened. No sound emerged. Mia pulled out her phone. For permanent disappearance, the base rate is 12 million. That includes a dramatic departure during heavy rain, a forged farewell letter, and 1 suitcase left behind to suggest emotional conflict. Seraphine stared at her. Darius slowly released the door handle. Cassian stood behind him, equally silent. Mia continued scrolling. If you want the amnesia package, that is more expensive. The what? Amnesia and disappearance. Very popular in prestige melodrama. Seraphine's eyes brightened to burning amber. Mia opened digital pay. I can offer 3 tiers. Basic temporary memory loss is 15 million. Full identity reset with relocation is 22. The premium package includes fabricated medical records, a new hairstyle, and an accidental reunion 3 years later when Darius recognizes me by a childhood song. Seraphine's face began to change. Her pupils stretched. Her nails sharpened against the table. Fur flickered along the backs of her hands. Outside the door, Cassian whispered, "She is going to shift." Darius did not move. A deep, unfamiliar sensation spread through his chest. Amusement. Not mild amusement, not the restrained satisfaction of watching an enemy fail. This was something brighter, warmer, dangerously close to laughter. And beneath it came something darker. Possessive pride. Mia stood alone with one of the cruelest wolves in the syndicate and had not merely survived the intimidation. She had converted it into a fee schedule. Inside, Mia lifted her phone. Would you prefer to scan the code or do a direct wire transfer? Seraphine's lips pulled back from lengthening teeth. You insolent little human! That tone suggests you are not satisfied with the package options. You think this is a game? No! Games have lower cancellation fees. The elder slammed both hands onto the table. Wood split beneath her palms. Mia looked at the crack. Property damage is not included. Seraphine's body trembled with the force of her restrained shift. You will leave him. For 1 million, yes. For 30 days. Forever. Then we need to discuss financing. The door opened. Darius stepped into the room. The force of his presence extinguished the fire. Seraphine turned sharply. Her partial transformation stopped at once. Darius did not look at her. He looked only at Mia. She stood beside the table in her crimson gown, holding the elder's checkbook in one hand and her phone in the other. Her face was composed. Her eyes were bright. She looked less like a frightened captive than a consultant closing a complicated deal. Something in Darius's expression changed. Mia saw it. His mouth did not smile, but the coldness around it had softened. Gold still burned in his eyes, yet the anger was no longer directed at the entire room. There was pride there. Possessive, astonished, undeniable pride. Darius crossed the parlor. He took the checkbook from Mia's hand. Seraphine drew herself upright. Alpha! This human has insulted me. Darius glanced down at the blank check. No, Seraphine stiffened. No? She quoted her rate. Mia nodded. Exactly. Darius closed the checkbook and handed it back to the elder. If you cannot afford her, do not waste her time. Cassian turned his face away. Seraphine's expression collapsed into pure disbelief. Darius placed one hand at the base of Mia's spine. The touch was firm and unmistakably intimate. He guided her toward the door. Mia looked up at him. You were listening. I heard enough. Do you want the premium package brochure? His thumb pressed against her back. Do not test me. Your dialogue is improving." They stepped into the corridor. Behind them, Seraphine released a sound halfway between a growl and a scream. The parlor door slammed shut. The impact shook dust from the stone ceiling. Mia looked over her shoulder. "She did not pay." Darius kept walking. "You are disappointed. One should never perform emotional labor without compensation. You attempted to sell your disappearance, temporarily, to an elder who wants you removed from my life. I quoted a fair market rate." Darius stopped. The corridor emptied around them as guards and servants sensed his mood and retreated. He turned Mia toward him. His hand remained on her waist. "You will not negotiate your disappearance with anyone." The humor in his voice was gone. His gaze dropped to her face with a sudden intensity that tightened her chest. Mia's smile faded slightly. "That sounds personal." "It is an order." "No, it sounded personal." Darius stared at her. The wolf moved beneath his skin, visible in the gold of his eyes and the rigid line of his jaw. For a moment, Mia thought he might deny it. Instead, he leaned closer. "Then consider it personal." The words settled between them. Low, rough, possessive, perfectly delivered. Mia's pulse stumbled. Darius watched the reaction with quiet satisfaction. Then he straightened and resumed walking toward the banquet hall. Mia followed half a step behind, momentarily speechless. Cassian watched her with faint amusement. She recovered before they reached the doors. "Good line," she said. Darius glanced down at her. "Do not ruin it." Mia smiled. For the first time since their contract began, she decided not to correct him. For exactly 11 seconds, Mia allowed herself to enjoy the fact that Darius' veil had rendered her speechless. Then a woman in silver stepped directly into their path. She was tall, elegant, and visibly furious. Her pale blonde hair fell in glossy waves over one shoulder. Diamonds flashed at her throat. The silver gown wrapped around her slender body like liquid metal, and her amber eyes moved from Darius's hand on Mia's waist to the dark stone resting above Mia's heart. The woman's smile sharpened. "Darius." He stopped. The warmth that had briefly entered his expression vanished. "Lenora." Mia glanced between them. The single-name greeting. The controlled hostility. The beautiful rival dressed in a color traditionally associated with emotional frigidity. Excellent. Lenora extended one jeweled hand toward Darius. "You have avoided me all evening. I have been occupied. With her." Her gaze struck Mia like a knife. Mia smiled politely. "Hello! You must be the threatened former romantic candidate." Lenora's hand dropped. "I beg your pardon?" "Possible childhood friend, politically suitable bride, daughter of a rival alpha who assumed proximity would eventually become marriage." The silence around them widened. Several nearby guests slowed without appearing to do so. Werewolf society, Mia had discovered, was full of people who could hear a private argument from across a ballroom while pretending to admire a sculpture. Lenora's expression tightened. "My father is Alpha Calder Voss, Rival Alpha's daughter." "Good. That completes the profile." Darius looked down at Mia. "Do not. I am identifying the narrative structure." "There is no structure." Lenora turned to him. "Why is she speaking as though we are fictional?" Darius's face remained unreadable. "It is easier not to ask." Mia extended her hand. "Mia Bennett, temporary object of public outrage." Lenora stared at it. Unlike Elder Garrick, she eventually accepted the handshake. Her fingers closed too tightly. Mia felt the pressure in her bones. Lenora waited for pain to show on her face. Mia continued smiling. Strong grip. Repressed aggression. Very efficient characterization. Lenora released her. The orchestra changed songs. Couples moved toward the polished floor beneath the chandeliers. Darius's hand settled more firmly against Mia's waist. "Come!" It was not a request. He led her away from Lenora. Mia looked over her shoulder. The rival woman remained motionless among the shifting crowd. Her beautiful face had gone pale with fury, but the expression beneath it was not merely jealousy. It was entitlement. Lenora looked at Darius as though he had been promised to her long before Mia entered the story. Mia turned forward again. She is going to cause a scene. I know. You say that very calmly. I have known Lenora since childhood connection. She has no authority over me. That has never stopped. A determined, supporting antagonist. Darius guided her onto the dance floor. Mia looked at the couples around them, then at him. This was not in the schedule. You are my fiancé. We are expected to dance. I charge for unscheduled physical intimacy. Send me an invoice. He took her right hand. His other hand moved to her waist. Mia's breath caught despite herself. Darius drew her closer with effortless strength. The distance between their bodies narrowed until the front of her gown brushed his tuxedo. Heat moved through the thin fabric. Can you dance? He asked. Can you? His eyebrow lifted. The music carried them forward. Darius moved with absolute control. Of course he did. His steps were precise, powerful, and smooth enough to make Mia suspect that Royal Werewolf education included ballroom dancing between combat training and hostile acquisition. She followed quickly. Around them, elders watched. Darius's gaze remained on her. You are distracted, he said. I am monitoring 3 potential poisoning opportunities, 2 concealed weapons, and 1 jealous woman experiencing a psychological collapse beside the fountain. You notice the weapons. The men carrying them keep touching their jackets. Amateur behavior. His fingers flexed against her waist. You are adapting too quickly. That sounds like praise. It is concern. You are concerned again. No, your denial lacks conviction. He turned her beneath his arm. The movement sent her skirt sweeping across the floor. When she came back against him, his hand landed lower on her back. Mia forgot the next step. Darius caught her before she stumbled. His mouth moved near her ear. Your footwork lacks emotional weight. She looked up sharply. The faintest hint of satisfaction appeared in his eyes. You made a joke. I made an observation. You made a joke based on my professional vocabulary. I regret it already. This is significant progress. Continue dancing. You may be ready for intermediate romantic dialogue. His gaze darkened. Careful, Mia. There it was again. That low warning. The voice that belonged in locked rooms and dangerous promises. Only now she knew enough to hear the strain beneath it. Darius was not warning her away from the role. He was warning her that the role was becoming real. The thought unsettled her more than the gunfire had. The song ended. Applause moved through the ballroom. Darius did not release her immediately. Neither did Mia step back. Then Cassian appeared at his shoulder. Alpha. The northern delegates are demanding a private vote. Darius's expression hardened. Now? They claim the attack on the eastern route proves your security command has weakened. Of course they do. He looked at Mia. Stay here. She glanced toward Lenora, who had disappeared from the fountain. That instruction has a poor success rate. Stay with Cassian. Cassian's eyes scanned the hall. Darius stepped closer to Mia. You do not leave this room. You do not follow messages delivered by servants. You do not enter any private parlors. You do not negotiate your disappearance. That last one was a single incident. Mia. His tone flattened every trace of humor. She nodded. I understand. Darius studied her for another second, then turned away. The crowd opened before him. Cassian remained beside Mia with the patient exhaustion of a man assigned to guard an unpredictable natural disaster. Mia accepted a sealed glass of sparkling water from him. How long will the vote take? If they value their lives, 10 minutes. And if they do not? Less. She took a sip. Across the ballroom, Lenora reappeared near the grand staircase. She stood alone beneath an archway, speaking to a servant carrying a tray of red wine. Her face looked composed again, but her hand closed around one of the glasses before the servant had fully stopped. Mia watched her. Lenora looked toward Darius's departing figure, then toward Mia. Their eyes met. Lenora smiled. Mia lowered her glass. Oh no! Cassian followed her gaze. What? She has chosen a staircase. He frowned. What does that mean? It means she has no respect for subtlety. Lenora turned and began ascending the broad stone steps. Halfway up, she paused beside a gilded railing and looked over her shoulder. The message was clear. Follow me. Mia stayed where she was. Lenora's smile faltered. She lifted the wine glass slightly. Mia continued staring. Lenora disappeared onto the upper landing. Cassian exhaled. Good! Mia handed him her water. I need a better angle. No, I am not following her into a private room. You are following her. Into a public staircase. The Alpha said not to leave the ballroom. The staircase is architecturally connected. Cassian caught her arm. Mia. She pulled out her phone. I am only going close enough to document the inevitable crime against believable acting. He stared at her. You cannot possibly know what she intends. She selected red wine and a staircase after publicly identifying me as a romantic threat. That explains nothing. It explains everything. Mia slipped free while Cassian was still trying to process the logic. She moved through the crowd but did not approach the center of the staircase. Instead, she stopped near a marble column with a wide view of the landing and activated her phone's camera. Wide-angle recording. High resolution. Timestamp enabled. Lenora appeared above her. Her face transformed immediately. Gone was the cold rival. In her place stood a wounded woman trembling with barely controlled emotion. Mia! She called softly. Several nearby guests turned. Perfect projection. Mia held the phone at waist level. Lenora descended 3 steps. I hoped we could speak privately. We cannot. You misunderstand me. Statistically unlikely. Lenora glanced around. The audience had formed. Not openly, of course. No one wanted to appear interested. But conversation softened. Bodies angled toward the staircase. Every predatory ear in the room listened. Lenora took another step. I know what you are doing. Recording in landscape orientation. You think you can steal his affection with your childish behavior. Mia's brows rose. Have you met Darius? Affection is not easily stolen. It is stored behind several reinforced walls and guarded by armed personnel. A few guests coughed to conceal laughter. Lenora's cheeks flushed. She raised the wine glass. You humiliated Elder Morcant. She presented a business opportunity. You have made a mockery of our laws. Some of them arrived pre-mocked. Lenora's fingers tightened around the stem. Then she tipped the glass against herself. Red wine spread dramatically across the front of her silver gown. Gasps moved through the crowd. Lenora stared down at the stain as though shocked. Then she looked at Mia. Her eyes filled with manufactured horror. How could you? Mia sighed. There it was. The setup was painfully obvious. Wine on the dress. Public accusation. Strategic position near the staircase. Lenora took one backward step. Her heel found the edge. She drew a breath. Mia held up one finger. Wait. Lenora froze. The audience froze with her. Mia walked closer, still recording. If you are about to throw yourself backward and claim I pushed you, your footwork is wrong. Lenora's expression cracked. What? You shifted your center of gravity too early. Mia pointed toward her shoes. Your left foot is braced against the stair. That tells the audience you are controlling the fall. For emotional weight, you need your knees softer and your shoulders more unstable. Lenora stared at her. Mia continued in a calm, instructional tone. Also, you spilled the wine before establishing physical proximity. I am 6 feet away. Even with supernatural strength, the blocking is impossible. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Lenora's face went crimson. You pushed me. I have not touched you. You threatened me. When? In the parlor. We were never in a parlor together. Lenora's eyes flicked toward the watching guests. She had committed too early. Now she had nowhere to go except forward. You vicious little liar. She lifted one foot. Mia looked down the staircase. A decorative sitting area occupied the base. 2 velvet chairs faced a low table. A square cushion rested on one seat. Mia kicked off one shoe. Before anyone understood what she was doing, she hooked the cushion with her foot and sent it sliding across the marble. It landed at the bottom of the staircase. Lenora stared at it. Mia nodded toward the cushion. Continue! The ballroom went silent. Lenora looked from Mia to the cushion. You expect me to fall? You planned the scene. I am supporting the performance. You are insane. I am protecting your spine. Several guests turned away to hide their expressions. Mia adjusted the angle of her phone. Try to rotate your right shoulder during the fall. It will create better visual movement. Avoid landing directly on your neck. We do not have a medical subplot scheduled until later. Lenora's mouth opened. No words came. Mia looked genuinely concerned. Do you need motivation? Stop speaking. You are portraying a fragile rival devastated by rejection. Think of Darius watching me dance. Lenora's amber eyes flashed. There, hold that expression. You think this is funny? No, I think it is technically weak. A laugh escaped from somewhere near the orchestra. Then another. The sound spread. Not loud. No one wished to openly mock Alpha Calder's daughter, but werewolves possessed excellent hearing, and suppressed laughter was still laughter. Lenora heard all of it. Her face crumpled. The fury disappeared first, then the arrogance. What remained was humiliation so complete that her lips began to tremble. She looked toward the doorway through which Darius had left. He was not there. No rescue. No sympathy. No opportunity to collapse into his arms and accuse Mia. Only dozens of witnesses and one human woman recording every second. Mia lowered her voice. Lenora, step away from the edge. The change in tone seemed to strike harder than the mockery. Lenora's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time. You took everything. Mia's humor faded. I met him 2 days ago. He was supposed to choose me. Was that his decision? It was understood. By whom? Lenora flinched. Mia watched the answer move across her face. By her father. By the elders. By everyone except Darius. Mia slowly lowered the phone. This is not a romance problem, she said. It is a consent problem with formal wear. Lenora made a broken sound. Then she turned and ran up the stairs. The crowd separated as she disappeared into the upper corridor. For several seconds, no one spoke. Cassian reached Mia. His expression held anger, disbelief, and reluctant admiration in equal measure. The Alpha will be furious. I prevented a spinal injury. You disobeyed a direct order. I remained in sight of the ballroom. You crossed 40 feet. Architecturally connected. Cassian closed his eyes. Mia stopped the recording. You should preserve the security footage as well. Multiple angles will prevent selective editing. I know how evidence works. Good, because her father may escalate. Cassian opened his eyes. The humor left his face. He will. Across the ballroom, 3 men wearing the dark bronze insignia of the Voss pack moved toward separate exits. Mia noticed them. So we have reached the point where amateur acting fails and the villains abandon subtlety. Cassian followed her gaze. His hand moved beneath his jacket. Stay behind me. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the ballroom. Screams erupted. The orchestra stopped mid-note. A body struck Mia from the side. She lost her phone. Cassian shouted her name. Mia opened her mouth, but a gloved hand clamped over it. Something sharp pressed against her ribs. Another arm locked around her waist and lifted her off the floor. She kicked backward. Her heel connected with a knee. A man cursed. Mia bit the hand over her mouth. Blood filled her mouth. The grip loosened. She screamed once. Then a cloth covered her face. A chemical smell flooded her nose. Mia twisted away before she inhaled fully, but her vision blurred. The ballroom returned in flashes as emergency lights activated. Cassian fought 2 men near the column. One crashed into a table. Another shifted partially, claws tearing through his sleeves. Mia saw the grand staircase. The cushion still rested at the bottom. Then a fist struck the side of her head. The world tilted. She felt herself dragged through a service door. Cold air hit her skin. Rain. An alley. Vehicle doors opening. Mia clawed at the arm around her, but the drug weakened her muscles. Her body no longer obeyed quickly enough. Someone threw her into the back of a van. She hit metal. Pain burst through her shoulder. The doors slammed. The engine roared. Mia rolled onto her side as the vehicle accelerated. Plastic restraints cut into her wrists. Two men sat across from her, both armed, both wearing the Voss insignia beneath their coats. One had blood running down his hand where she had bitten him. He struck her across the face. "Try that again!" Mia tasted blood. Her fear arrived fully now. Not performative fear. Not the controlled nervousness of a hostile banquet. This was real. There were no witnesses, no polished floor, no Darius standing close enough to fill the room with power. Only a dark van, armed kidnappers, and the violent movement of the road beneath her body. Mia forced herself to breathe. The wounded man leaned closer. "Your clever mouth will make this worse." She looked at the blood on his glove. "Your kidnapping technique lacks emotional weight." He raised his hand again. The other man caught his wrist. "Alpha Calder wants her conscious." The van turned sharply. Mia slid across the metal floor. She closed her eyes for 1 second and began counting. Turns. Speed. Dirshan. Road texture. Translation required attention to detail. So did survival. She listened to the engine, the rain, the distant echo as they passed through a tunnel. She counted every change in direction and stored it behind the panic. No one spoke for several minutes. Then the van slowed. The air changed. Salt, rust, stagnant water, industrial district. The doors opened. A huge man grabbed Mia by the ankles and dragged her out. Her back struck the bumper before she hit wet concrete. Above her stood an abandoned warehouse with shattered windows and a rusted steel roof. No nearby lights, no visible traffic, the perfect location for leverage, threats, and poorly planned villain speeches. Mia was lifted again. This time, she did not joke. They carried her inside. The warehouse smelled of oil and seawater. Chains hung from overhead beams. A single floodlight burned above a wooden chair positioned in the center of the floor. Lenora stood beside it. Her silver gown had been replaced by a dark coat, but the wine stain remained visible beneath it. Her face was swollen from crying. Her eyes were no longer humiliated. They were desperate. Mia was forced into the chair. The restraints around her wrists were cut away, only to be replaced by rope looped tightly around her arms and chest. Lenora watched every movement. "You should have taken the check," she said. "That was a different elder." "I would have paid you." Mia tested the ropes. "Your family appears to favor transactions after coercion." Lenora stepped closer. "You made me a joke. You attempted to frame me for attempted murder." "You took him from me. No one can take a person who never belonged to you." Lenora slapped her. Mia's head snapped sideways. The warehouse fell silent. When Mia looked back, Lenora was breathing hard. Her hand trembled. Mia's cheek burned, but she studied the woman in front of her with new clarity. This was no longer amateur melodrama. Lenora had crossed the line from humiliation to violence, and she had brought people willing to kill. "Darius will come," Lenora whispered. Mia looked toward the dark warehouse doors. Of that, she had no doubt. The more dangerous question was what would remain standing when he arrived. The more dangerous question was what would remain standing when he arrived. The answer, Mia decided, depended heavily on whether the kidnappers accepted constructive criticism. Lenora had left 20 minutes earlier with her father's second-in-command, claiming she needed to prepare for Darius's arrival. That sounded impressive until Mia realized it meant standing behind armed men while someone else explained the ransom terms. The remaining guards had arranged themselves around the warehouse in positions clearly intended to appear threatening. They were failing. One stood beneath the only working floodlight, making himself an obvious target. Two guarded the main doors while facing in the same direction. Another leaned against a stack of unstable shipping crates. The man Mia had bitten sat nearby, wrapping fresh cloth around his injured hand and glaring at her. A metal table had been dragged in front of her chair. On it sat a communication device, 3 loaded weapons, and a dented kettle. Mia studied the kettle. "Is there tea?" No one answered. She looked at the nearest guard. "You kidnapped me during a formal banquet, transported me through heavy rain, struck me twice, tied me to a chair, and still failed to offer basic refreshments." The guard stared at her. Mia sighed. This entire operation lacks professionalism. The bitten man stood. His name, she had learned, was Rafay. He was large, scarred, and increasingly troubled by the fact that intimidation had no visible effect on her. "You should be quiet. You said that 40 minutes ago. And you have not stopped talking." "Correct. That should indicate the strategy is ineffective." Rafay stepped toward her. The warehouse doors groaned in the wind. Mia looked beyond him toward the shadows. She could feel something coming. Not hear it, not see it. Feel it. The air changed. A pressure rolled through the warehouse, so vast and violent that the hanging chains began to sway. Dust trembled from the rafters. Every armed man went rigid. Mia's heart slammed against her ribs. Darius. Far outside, thunder broke over Obsidian Bay. At least, Mia assumed it was thunder. The guards raised their weapons. One moved toward the communication device. Mia cleared her throat. "I would not do that." Ralph turned. "You are in no position to give orders." "I am not giving an order. I am preventing an avoidable massacre." A low growl moved through the night beyond the warehouse walls. It was not human. The sound entered the building through broken windows and cracks in the steel, deep enough to vibrate through Mia's chair. Several guards went pale. Mia nodded toward the doors. "That is the male lead." Ralph grabbed a rifle. "That is one man." "No, that is a wounded, emotionally repressed Alpha King whose temporary fiancée has been kidnapped during the final act." The guards exchanged uncertain looks. Mia leaned forward as far as the ropes allowed. "Do you understand what you have done?" Ralph's jaw tightened. "We took leverage. You triggered protective plot armor." Silence. The low growl outside grew closer. Mia lowered her voice. "Kidnapping the female lead does not weaken the male lead. It eliminates his remaining moral restrictions." One guard slowly looked toward the door. Mia continued. "Until tonight, Darius had political obligations, council expectations, security protocols, a public reputation. Those things encouraged restraint. A heavy impact struck somewhere outside. Metal screamed. The guards flinched. Mia's expression remained grave. Now he has a warehouse full of anonymous enemies, no civilian witnesses, and a personal emotional motive." Rafe pointed the rifle at her. "You are trying to frighten us." "Yes." The honesty unsettled him more than denial would have. Another impact shook the building. This time, a scream followed. Short. Male. Then silent. One of the younger kidnappers backed away from the doors. "How many men were outside?" "8, someone answered. The younger man swallowed. Mia looked around the group. "You have perhaps 3 minutes before he enters." Rafe's eyes narrowed. "And you think talking will save you?" "No. Surrender might. We have you." Mia looked down at the ropes around her body. "You have placed me in the center of the room under excellent lighting." The men followed her gaze. She continued. "You are not holding a hostage. You are displaying the one thing he is least willing to risk harming. That means none of you can fire directly toward him once he stands behind me." Rafe's expression shifted. Mia saw the realization arrive. She pressed the advantage. "You also tied my arms rather than securing me to the floor. He can remove me from the line of fire in under 1 second." One of the guards whispered, "She is right." Rafe rounded on him. "Shut up!" Mia turned to the young guard. "He will probably cross the warehouse through the upper beams." The young man looked up. Every other guard looked up with him. Mia smiled faintly. "Now you have broken formation." Raf's face darkened. "You manipulated us." "Very easily." He strode toward her. The main warehouse door buckled inward. Everyone spun around. 4 deep claw marks appeared through the steel. The guards raised their weapons. Mia's pulse raced so hard that her vision sharpened. "Final warning," she said. Drop the guns. Rafe grabbed the back of her chair. You think he cares whether we surrender? No, that answer stopped him. Mia held his gaze. I think I do. For the first time since the kidnapping, no humor softened her voice. If you force him to kill all of you, he will. He will tear through this building until there is no one left to threaten me. And tomorrow, he will carry every death in silence, because that is what men like him do. The guards stared at her. Mia's throat tightened. He will call it necessary. He will pretend it cost him nothing, and he will become exactly the monster his enemies expect. The pressure outside became unbearable. Gold light flashed through the narrow gaps around the door. Mia looked toward it. So I am asking you to surrender before he has to prove them right. No one moved. Then the young guard lowered his weapon. Rafe cursed. What are you doing? Living. A second guard lowered his rifle, then a third. Rafe looked around in disbelief as the defensive line collapsed. Mia nodded toward the kettle. Good. Now untie me. No one volunteered. Fine, tea first. The young guard stared at her. You want tea? I have been kidnapped for over an hour. The steel door bent inward again. Mia raised her eyebrows. The young guard rushed toward the kettle. Rafe looked as though his mind had separated from reality. You are serving her tea? She said surrender might save us. She is the hostage. She is also the only person in this warehouse who appears to understand what is happening. The young guard poured hot water into a chipped cup. His hands shook so badly that some spilled across the table. He approached Mia carefully. The ropes prevented her from taking it. They stared at each other. You will have to hold it, Mia said. He lifted the cup to her lips. The warehouse door exploded inward. Steel flew across the concrete. The floodlight shattered. Darkness swallowed half the room. Darius stood in the opening. Rain poured behind him. Blood covered his shirt, though Mia could not tell how much belonged to him. His tailored coat was gone. His sleeves were torn to the elbows. Black claws extended from his fingers. Gold light burned in his eyes, bright enough to illuminate the brutal angles of his face. He did not look fully human. The wolf had risen too close to the surface. His shoulders appeared broader. His teeth were sharper. Power rolled from him in apocalyptic waves, crushing the air from the lungs of everyone present. Behind him, Cassian and a line of armed Vale wolves filled the rain. Darius stepped into the warehouse. Every kidnapper dropped to his knees. Weapons struck the floor. Rafe remained standing for half a second longer than the others. Darius looked at him. Rafe fell so quickly that his knees cracked against the concrete. The young guard was still holding the tea to Mia's mouth. Darius stopped. His gaze moved from the cup to the ropes around her body, then to the men kneeling around her. Confusion cut through the rage. Mia took a small sip. It is not very good. The young guard lowered the cup. Darius stared at her. Mia saw everything in his face at once. Fury. Relief. Disbelief. And beneath all of it, terror. Not fear for his throne. Not fear of rebellion. Fear that he had been too late. His claws slowly retracted. Cassian entered behind him and surveyed the scene. He looked at the surrendered kidnappers, then at the tea, then at Mia. I do not want to know. She convinced us surrender was part of the plot, the young guard whispered. Cassian closed his eyes. Darius began walking. The kneeling men bent lower as he passed. Mia's breathing changed with each step he took. This was not the controlled alpha from the banquet, not the immaculate king who silenced elders with a look. This was the creature beneath the suit, stripped of discipline by panic. He stopped in front of her. For several seconds, he said nothing. His eyes moved over the bruise on her cheek, the cut near her hairline, the ropes. Mia attempted a smile. You took longer than projected. Darius dropped to one knee. The entire warehouse seemed to inhale. His hands closed around the ropes. He tore them apart. Not untied. Tore. The bindings fell away. Mia rubbed her wrists. Darius looked at the red marks on her skin. A growl rose in his chest. The kneeling kidnappers flattened themselves against the floor. Mia touched his face. The growl stopped. His skin was cold from the rain. Stubble scraped her palm. His gold eyes lifted to hers. "You came," she said. The words sounded too simple for what moved between them. Darius caught her wrist. His grip was firm, but his thumb pressed gently against her pulse. "You were taken. I noticed. You disobeyed me. I stayed architecturally connected to the ballroom." His expression broke. Not into amusement, into pain, raw and furious. "I heard you scream." Mia went still. Darius lowered his forehead against her hand. The Alpha King knelt on a blood-stained warehouse floor in front of enemies and soldiers, holding her wrist as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. "I heard you," he said again. "Then you were gone." His voice was rough. Mia had never heard him sound vulnerable. "I followed your scent until it disappeared in the rain. For 7 minutes, I did not know where they had taken you. 7 minutes." He spoke the number as though it had lasted years. Mia's humor faded entirely. "Darius, I imagined every possible thing they could do." His fingers tightened. "The wolf wanted to kill everyone in this district. I almost let it." Mia slid from the chair and knelt in front of him. They were nearly level now. "You did not." "Because I heard you speaking." A faint, disbelieving breath left him. "You were teaching your kidnappers narrative theory." "They needed guidance." "They were serving you tea." "It was a successful seminar." His eyes closed. For one moment, his shoulders shook. Mia realized he was laughing. Not politely, not quietly. The sound was low, broken, and completely unfamiliar, dragged from someplace inside him that had been locked for years. It ended almost as quickly as it began. When he opened his eyes again, the amusement had transformed into something deeper, something fierce. "Mia." She heard the warning. But this time, it was not meant to protect her from him. It was the final chance to move away. She did not. Darius stood and pulled her up with him. His arm locked around her waist. Her body struck his massive chest. The warehouse disappeared. The kneeling enemies. The armed soldiers. The rain. All of it became distant beneath the force of his attention. "This was supposed to be an arrangement," he said. Mia's hands rested against his chest. His heart hammered beneath her palms. "A 3-month contract." "I know." "You were supposed to be protected because you were useful." "That is very romantic." "I am not finished." She fell silent. His face lowered toward hers. "I knew the moment you were taken that the contract meant nothing." Mia's breath caught. "I would have surrendered the throne, the Pax, every territory in Obsidian Bay. I would have burned my own kingdom to the ground if it brought you back." The confession shook her more than his rage had. Darius touched the bruise on her cheek with unbearable gentleness. "I have spent my life controlling every weakness before an enemy could find it." His eyes burned gold. "Then you appeared in the rain, insulted my dialogue, negotiated dumplings, and became the one weakness I cannot remove." Mia looked up at him. "Technically, that makes me a character development device." His mouth almost smiled. "No." His hand moved to the back of her neck. "It makes you mine." The possessive words should have frightened her. Instead, warmth spread through her chest. "Your fake fiancée," she whispered. Darius's expression hardened. "No!" He kissed her. There was no rehearsal, no warning, no carefully negotiated public affection rate. His mouth came down on hers with raw, feral possession. Mia's back arched against his arm. Her fingers closed in his torn shirt. The kiss was fierce enough to erase thought, filled with everything Darius never said. Terror, relief, hunger, fury, need. His other arm wrapped around her, lifting her slightly against his body. A growl vibrated through his chest. Mia kissed him back. The moment she did, his control shattered. He angled her head and deepened the kiss, claiming every breath she tried to take. Heat rushed through her. His claws threatened to emerge again, but his hands remained careful on her body, holding her as though she were both precious and dangerously necessary. Around them, the warehouse remained silent. No one was foolish enough to interrupt. When Darius finally lifted his head, Mia could barely breathe. His forehead rested against hers. "That," she whispered, "was not in the contract." "I know. Public kissing has a fee. I am not paying it." She blinked. Darius's eyes held hers. "I am changing the terms." Back at the Vale estate, security locked down every gate, corridor, and access road. The surrendered kidnappers were placed in custody. Lenora and her father were captured before sunrise at a private airfield while attempting to flee Obsidian Bay. Cassian handled the arrests personally. Mia sat in Darius's study wearing one of his white shirts over borrowed lounge pants. The sleeves covered most of her hands. Her hair was damp from the shower. A physician had cleaned the cut near her temple and confirmed that nothing was broken. Darius stood near the fireplace. He had changed into dark trousers and a black shirt, but he had not returned to his usual armor of jacket, tie, and flawless composure. He watched her constantly. Every time she moved, his gaze followed. Mia placed her phone, tablet, and a handwritten document on the desk. Darius looked at the paper. "What is that?" "Our verbal contract." "You wrote it down." "Of course. I added the gala rates, kidnapping surcharge, emotional distress compensation, and one unscheduled kiss." His expression darkened. "One?" "Repeated contact within a continuous scene counts as one." Darius walked toward the desk. Mia began calculating. 3 days at the base rate. 1 formal banquet. 1 public dance. Elder confrontation premium. Staircase incident. Violent abduction. Warehouse confinement. 2 facial injuries. Also, your security team destroyed my phone. Darius picked up the contract. "I had already backed up the recording," she added. He read the first page. Mia watched his face. "Total payout is substantial, but I am willing to waive the secret twin reserve." Darius tore the paper in half. Mia stared. He tore it again. And again. Pieces drifted onto the desk. "That was my only physical copy. The contract is over." Mia's chest tightened. She covered the reaction with a small shrug. "Fine. Early termination requires 30 days of compensation." Darius came around the desk. Mia stood. He stopped directly in front of her. "The script is over," he said. His voice was a low, dangerous rumble. She looked up at him. "No more fake engagement. No more performance. No more scheduled appearances." Mia forced a smile. "I understand." "No, you do not." His hand closed around her waist. He pulled her forward. "You are not leaving." The smile vanished. That sounded personal. "It is." "Darius, you are my mate." The room became silent. Mia felt the words settle into her bones. Not fiancé, not employee, mate. Darius's gaze searched her face, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw uncertainty in the Alpha King. Real uncertainty. He could command packs, break rebellions, tear steel apart with his hands. But he could not force her to choose him. His fingers loosened slightly against her waist. "I do not know when it happened," he said. "Perhaps the moment you demanded payment for your ruined noodles. Perhaps when you faced Seraphine without lowering your eyes. Perhaps when you protected a woman who tried to frame you by placing a cushion beneath her fall." Mia swallowed. Darius touched her cheek. "But I know what I felt when they took you." His voice dropped. "The bond was not a role. It was not politics. It was not duty." Gold flickered through his eyes. "It was you." Mia placed both hands against his chest. "And if I say no?" Pain crossed his face. "Quick. Devastating. Then I will protect you until you are safely beyond my enemy's reach. I will pay every ridiculous fee you invented. I will give you anything you ask." His jaw tightened. "And I will spend the rest of my life wanting you." There was no demand in the words, only truth. Mia looked at the torn contracts scattered across the desk. 3 months had seemed absurdly long when he first dragged her into his armored vehicle. Now the idea of an ending felt wrong. She looked back at him. A lifelong arrangement would require revised terms. Darius went still. Mia slid her arms around his neck. No fake pregnancy plotline without written consent. His hands tightened on her waist. "Agreed. Daily dumplings remain mandatory. Agreed. No locking me in towers for my own protection. We will discuss that. Darius. Fine. And you must continue your emotional education. His eyes narrowed. I have expressed more emotion in 3 days than I intended to express in a lifetime. That is only the first season. Something warm entered his face. A season, Mia smiled. This is a lifelong series, no series finale. Darius looked at her as though she had handed him a kingdom greater than the one he already ruled. Then he lowered his head. Agreed. His mouth touched hers gently this time. The softness broke something open inside her. The kiss deepened slowly, not as a performance or a claim made for watching enemies, but as a promise made in private. Darius held her with immense strength and impossible care, like a man who had finally found the one person before whom he did not need to pretend he was invulnerable. Mia had spent years correcting badly written declarations, artificial conflicts, and dramatic kisses that arrived without emotional logic. This one needed no edit. Months later, the elders still spoke cautiously about the human mate of the Alpha King. They called her unpredictable. Darius called her brilliant. Mia continued translating melodramas from a private office in the Vale estate, though she now charged the syndicate consultation fees whenever pack politics became embarrassingly cliché. Seraphine never offered her another check. Cassian refused to discuss the warehouse tea. Darius remained terrifying to everyone except Mia. With her, he learned to laugh. He learned to apologize without making it sound like a military command. He learned that vulnerability was not surrender, and that love did not weaken the throne. It gave the king somewhere safe to set down the crown. And whenever Darius became too controlling, too silent, or too convinced that violence was the solution to every conflict, Mia would lift one eyebrow and tell him his character development was slipping. The Alpha King always listened. Eventually. If you enjoyed this steamy, hilarious, and thrilling paranormal romance audiobook, please hit the like button and subscribe for more epic stories.